back to the GameDev Breakdown Podcast. My name is Todd Mitchell. If you're looking at the video screen, you can see a big black empty space over on the left-hand side. That is where my friend John Schreiber usually is. He is not with us tonight. He is busy and doing things, and I haven't gotten to speak with him for a couple of days, but I'm hoping he'll be back with us real soon. In the meantime, pause for drink. In the meantime, we got some fun stuff to talk about and some huge news. We've been super busy lately. I am doing some work with a studio here in the area, some cool VR projects. I'm super excited for some of these things to go live so I can show them around. They are super hush-hush at the moment, and it's so much fun. If you've ever thought about getting into VR, or you're already a 3D developer and you're curious about how VR stuff is, get into it. It is the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done. It's in terms of game development and software stuff. It's just so much fun, and it's much more approachable than you're probably thinking. So I would encourage people to check it out if you have an interest in that. My game Letter Taps just turned 1 year old. It's been in the app stores for over a year as of last weekend. So to celebrate, I put the game up for free in the iOS and Android stores and just told people, hey, tell your friends if you guys want to download this, you can have it. I joked, I'm sure that a couple of kids have been born since last year, so maybe someone can put that to good use. And it's been great. People have downloaded it and become players of the game, and I assume it's their kids playing the game, but I'm very excited to have some new users on that. And the strategy behind that, for one thing, I wanted to do something nice because people have been really supportive since the game has come out. So I wanted to do something nice, spend a weekend where you didn't have to spend 99 cents to play the thing on your phone. But yeah, the strategy behind that is if you put a game up for free for a weekend or a few days or whatever, the idea is hopefully people will download it, review, share with friends, create a little buzz, which should theoretically give it some traction in the app stores when you do turn the price tag back on. So in my case, it's only $1. I haven't actually looked since the sale ended. So, but I know 5-6 people on each store picked it up right away the first day I checked it, which was neat. We're not talking huge numbers, but just to see some action on the app again is nice. So day job stuff, and I bring that up because it is game dev related, but I have finished a milestone for a studio in the area that I'm doing some work with, and I think everyone attached to the project is just running on fumes right now. Everyone's working real hard, and I bring that up because when you get in that kind of burnout mode, I'm not in full burnout, but like I have spent some late nights. If you looked close enough, you could see my left eye like twitching, like the muscles are in my eyelids are just going nuts. Too many screens, too many headsets. Today was nice because I got to send off a bunch of files to a project manager, explain to him what's going on, and then sit back and like turn on Hulu. What did I watch? I turned on the Bob Newhart show. I'm not old enough to appreciate that show fully, but like when I was a little kid, they used to be on Nick at Night, and I just thought it was funny that I could stream that show. I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch the pilot episode of this, 40, 50-year-old TV show. So I hung out with my kid, watched some super old TV, and literally played with Silly Putty for like a couple of hours. And we were just goofing around in the living room. And you have to get in that mode sometimes when you've just gone nuts and you're just pounding away at the keyboard day after day. Like, you've got to have some simple relaxation time for sure. And that is what I've been doing, and I'm starting to feel a little better. So the big news, I will be going to GDC next month, Game Developer Conference, and I'm going to pull their event page up on the screen so you can see. Look, John's gone. We put a nice browser in his place. Look at that. We'll bring John back, though, as soon as he's ready. So GDC is coming up in March, second half of March, and I heard from someone on behalf of Microsoft who said they want podcasters at the event who might, they use the word might, record at the event. I'm definitely going to go, and I'm definitely going to record, and you guys will benefit from that. So expect that. Around that time, we will put out stuff daily for sure. As many people as I can talk to, as many things as I can do. things I can attend, whatever I can bring back to you, I certainly will. And I am so grateful for Microsoft's decision to bring me out as a guest. That was super, super cool. Everything's heading in a super positive direction. We're starting to make some friends and make some contacts that I never would have expected. And opportunities are popping up all the time, and we're going to take advantage of it. And stick around because I want to make sure that you guys benefit from all of that. So get excited about GDC if you're not already. You probably are. Look at some of the stuff scrolling by on the homepage. State of the industry stuff is cool, but they're going to do some classic game postmortems. The big one for me is, there's Sonic the Hedgehog. Obviously, that's a doozy. Everybody loves Sonic. But here it is, NBA Jam, the postmortem. We're talking, 25 years? And they've got, the guy's name is Mark Turmel. He was like the lead developer on the game. I would love to hear him talk. I don't think I'm going to get to because of my schedule and his schedule. But holy crap, what an awesome event. And hopefully they will capture some video and put that online because, God, that's awesome. Just imagine getting that opportunity to, we all played these games as kids, anyone, my age. Never would you dream that you'd get to hear somebody talk about like, yeah, here's how that came about. Here's what I learned. Here's interesting tidbits about development. They did a great one about GoldenEye a couple of years back, and you can find that for sure on YouTube. That's an awesome thing to watch. So I talk about postmortems all the time. It's super fascinating. If you're into the art and science of game development, I strongly recommend checking that out. Okay, so I am going to harp on GDC because I'm so excited that I'm going to get to go. I'm a dude from the Midwest, and I don't work in the proper game industry. I had to sort of build my path in myself. So to actually get an opportunity like this, it does mean a ton to me, and I will definitely make it worth everyone's time, for sure. So be on the lookout for more GDC stuff, and we're going to chat about a few things in this episode. We got some listener feedback, and we mentioned our buddy Scott from Indiana, and he had something else for us shortly after we first spoke, and he was asking me about publishers, both the publishing process for the mainstream game industry and then publishing for indies, because some indies do work with publishers. You hear indie and you think without a publisher, but he was interested in hearing about the publishing process, especially as it pertains to indie studios. And I thought that was a great topic because it's complicated. It's not as easy as, if you're an indie studio, you make your game, you put it out there, you are your own publisher, maybe not. The industry is kind of moving in a direction where certain companies and even certain studios will take on indies and provide them resources. To kind of set this up, I will briefly touch on the actual process of like traditional publishing. So a traditional publisher, it doesn't make sense to name names of big publishing companies because that would just confuse things. But studios would usually get hooked up with a publisher to provide money, to pay staff, and to pay for equipment and servers, all the stuff that you need to make your game and to run your game, support your game. The way it would typically work is they would release certain amounts of money to a studio when certain milestones are delivered. Milestone being a software update or a certain set of features or whatever they decide on. You can decide on anything you want. Once you hit that milestone, they release that certain amount of funds. So in exchange, then usually a publisher owns some or all of the revenue for the game after it comes out. They're basically just paying you like a traditional job while you create this game, and then they just take it and do their thing. It's beneficial for the product because traditional publishers spend a whole lot of time. They spend a little time managing their studios underneath them, and then a whole lot of time developing contacts, working on marketing, doing levels of research and data analytics and stuff that you would really never dream of. At least a good publisher does, and you hope that's what they're doing because that's a big part of the allure of using a traditional publisher. Now, where this gets a little interesting is indies first rose to fame by saying, we've got this team and we're going to make this game or do this project, and we're not going to use a publisher. Either that means they will just take it directly to the world and hope it catches on, or they will make some effort to do all of the steps that a traditional publisher would do for them. So they will do their own marketing, and they're trying to do their own research, and it is tough when you're on the outside and your primary job is development. The whole thing is publishing is supposed to let developers develop and designers design. So, you don't have a whole lot of extra staff you can allocate to marketing or whatever, and then you end up kind of having to fill that role and do, less development and more marketing, or less design and more, trying to come up with a long list of contacts you can call for favors or distribution help or whatever it might be. So as we move towards a model where indies are coming out and going, we're doing it by ourselves, we don't need a publisher. What we're learning is that sometimes, yes, an indie does need a publisher. So sort of this vacuum opened up for indie publishing. What we're seeing is a good example of a studio that started this was Double Fine. I'm going to pull this article up on screen by Game Informer. It's what I would describe as an unusually good Game Informer article about Double Fine stepping up and deciding that though they are an indie studio, or certainly started that way, they are going to help other indie studios, quote, stay indie, by helping them, like, in a publishing role, but with sort of an unconventional contract or agreement. And they don't really go into specifics because I know that they pride themselves on being flexible in that area, but they are stepping in to help indies publish their games, do the correct steps because they know the process. A whole lot of this is just about knowledge. Traditional publishing is mostly about money. Indie publishing is sometimes more about knowledge and resources and just having some contacts that they can step in with. And Double Fine obviously knows the process of, coming up with a concept and prototyping and developing and then marketing and reaching your audience and all of this stuff. And so they know this from an actual industry perspective, and they can step in and sort of help you apply this to indie development. Some of these concepts are familiar because for a couple of weeks we've been talking about sort of acting as your own publisher. We didn't really label it that, but that's what you would be doing if you go back a couple of episodes and plan your social media strategies and plan what to do with your website and all of this stuff. A lot of times your publisher would either have very strong opinions about that, or they would allocate someone to do it for you, or they would have tools for it. You can find people who are attached to indie publishers saying stuff like, I've never once had a developer pitch me something who was doing any sort of marketing work. That's bullshit. I don't believe that. Look around on Twitter. Like, you will find marketing. You'll find very hard work on promotion and stuff like that. That doesn't mean people are doing it smart. People are sure doing it. So I never want to undersell indie developers. Most of them do their due diligence and they work very hard on every step that a publisher would do. However, having actual industry expertise like people from Double Fine, well, you can't really beat that. So the idea that certain studios are stepping up to help with that is actually pretty cool. Is there room for a different company to come in and abuse people? Yeah, that potential exists for sure. But, you guys are smart. You know what a good contract looks like and a bad contract. Things are listed out in great detail, and usually it just comes down to, here would be the price, here would be the ramifications if I were to sign with this publisher, and here's whether or not I should do it. So to try to directly answer Scott's question is, traditional publishing is about money and, manufacturing when that was more of a thing. Now everything's kind of digital, but when it came to putting things on shelves and stuff, that'd be a great thing to hand to a publisher who might even hand that off to another company. But when it comes to indie publishing, a lot of it is about knowledge and having the right people in place for when you freak out and go, I'm in over my head and I don't know what I'm doing. But it's all about having the right process, knowing what to do and when. They have your back and you work out with them what that's going to be worth. Another aspect of it is, the rights you retain. So with a traditional publisher, like, you retained basically no rights. They determined what happened with sequels and what happened with, can we port this or can we put this on sale? Can we change the price? Can we change the features? Publishers would have basically the final word because they had the power to sign the check or not sign the check. So when it comes to indie publishers, it's a lot more about, hey, we're both small companies, probably. And how can we both benefit from this and have a good time and take, good products to the public? It's not right in every situation. For some of my projects, I never would have dreamed of signing away anything because for one thing, I knew there was only so much potential for it anyway, and it was just something I wanted to do. But one funny thing about this is not even a year, it was 2 years ago when I was just getting rolling on some of my projects like Letter Taps, and there was a game before it that I was just full speed ahead on, and things sort of changed and I didn't get to do it, but I was so sleep deprived. My son was less than a year old, and I was still adapting to being a parent around the clock, and just adapting to indie work and trying to help pay the bills by doing odd jobs and freelance stuff. And I never got enough rest, and of course my wife didn't either, and we're just all sort of zombies. And I was pounding away at the keyboard all the time, and it was so funny. Like, I was working so much harder than I had ever worked before at a full-time job. But so I was just kind of a zombie, wasn't thinking straight, and I went back into my email because I read an article because I was researching this for this show, and I recognized a guy's name who was talking about indie publishing, and where have I heard that guy's name? And I went back to my email and punched it in, and I realized that guy had contacted me on, it was either LinkedIn or Twitter or maybe both, several times. And it wasn't like form letter stuff. It was like, hey Todd, I was curious, you put up this tweet, I know you have this project, I'm a developer too, I was just curious to hear about it and learn what I can and network with you and stuff. It was basically a publisher meeting, and I didn't even consider it because I saw an email from LinkedIn. I was like, what? Leave me alone. I want to develop and I want to sleep and I hate this, and just leave me alone. I totally shut that guy down. I never even responded to multiple emails. It was embarrassing to go back and read this because the last one was like, hey buddy, I hadn't heard from you and I wanted to make sure that message went through. And I never, to this day, I actually need to go back and go I know this is stupid and way too late, but I'm really sorry about that. That was dumb. Let's talk in the future. I didn't even get to consider it because I was being stupid. So moral of the story is, don't be ridiculous like me. If you get an email from these guys, hear them out. They're doing the best they can. They're just doing jobs like you, and they want to work in the industry like you and network with these people. I'm normally very good about that. This guy I totally crapped on by not even responding. In my defense, I do get, and this isn't bragging, anybody who's set up on LinkedIn and has certain keywords on there, you get hounded by people constantly. And I get hounded by people constantly, and I've actually shut down my LinkedIn for a second time now, and I have no regrets because it's starting to finally trail off. Another side note, one of our friends on Twitter, and I forget her handle, but she's been having a rough time. She got laid off from her industry job, and she does not work in the United States, and she has complicated rules about what she can do and what options she has to relocate and stuff, and she's doing this frantic job search. And obviously LinkedIn is a big one, even though it's more buttoned down and people are going to hound you about stuff you don't really want to do. But she was talking about all these recruiter calls, and she couldn't keep track of who she had spoken to and things like how far they got and how interested the employer seemed, and whether they wanted to see anything like a portfolio or whatever. And I gave her a tip that I only got smart enough to start doing here in the last 5 years or so, out of 10 or 15 that I've had a career like this. But start a spreadsheet. If you are having a job search, you should have a big detailed spreadsheet for several reasons. And the kind of stuff you should have are dates and numbers you called and people you spoke to, and gauge their interest 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or however you want to do it. If it's worth following up on, make a note about that. Discuss the things you talked about, whatever, but get a spreadsheet going. It's not only going to help you now, but later on. I mentioned recruiters because they are sort of shameless about what they're willing to try with you. I hear from a lot of recruiters who will tell me stuff like, hey, you and I spoke about this job a while back, and we spoke about this contract, we talked several times, you were really interested, and I have determined that people were full of shit. I hear from people who I never spoke to before and just lie their asses off trying to get me to go, oh my God, I am ignoring this professional relationship that I was developing, much like the one I was actually ignoring. But no, they will straight up try to act like, hey, you left me hanging when in fact you never wanted to hear from this person at all. And if you go back and actually keep notes about this stuff, not only are you going to see more on the ball with employers during your job search, 6 months later you'll be able to call somebody on it, either yes, we did speak and here's what happened, or no, I don't know you, please leave me alone. That's just a tip for you. You can take that or leave that. Now, on the side of unsolicited advice, I've got a quick thing there too, because and Scott from Indiana, thanks, buddy. Thanks for the question. It's a good question, and I would have loved to get John's thoughts on this too, because we could do more than one show on the topic of publishers. But the ultimate answer is publishers are cool. Like, they provide options, and everything that provides options needs to be examined and needs to be considered. It's not right all the time, but use your head. Don't just blindly follow your heart, or don't just get excited or scared. Really consider what publishers have to offer. Don't sink too much time into it if you know you're not going to go that route, but do look into it if ever you feel like you have a project that would benefit from that help. And we'll talk another time about actually approaching people like that, because it's a lot like the job search process also. It's a matter of contacting people, gauging interest, presenting yourself the right way. So I think that's a good topic for another show. Unsolicited advice for this week. There's so much talk on Twitter about it's basically self-confidence. And we have discussed this, I know, but it's from a different angle this time. People are talking about, like, make sure you don't spend any time looking at what other people do on Twitter, like other game developers. Don't look at their projects and don't play their demos, because sometimes, you know what, you just got to consider what you're doing and what's important about you and what makes you great, and don't even worry about those other projects. Okay, I get it, but what that sounds to me like is over on the Facebook side, where everybody's like, don't look at pictures of people's dogs and ponies and kids and their Merry Christmas. That's all bullshit. Like, they don't actually have a perfect life, and so don't feel bad about yourself. And that's nonsense for so many reasons. For one thing, yeah, people do have good lives sometimes. Some people are just happy, whether or not you think they should be. People have worked hard to get what they want, and sometimes they've got it, and you should be happy for them. Like, it's a weird instinct to me to go like, well, my brother is so happy. I don't like it. Like, make yourself happy. Like, find what it's gonna take. Just focus that on you getting happy and you getting what you need. Back on our side, on the game development side, be excited for people who are doing the indie thing and are doing it well. That has nothing to do with you. Get your mind into a place where you see that, hey, if it's a thing that can influence you in some way, or you find something that maybe it makes something new fire in your brain, that's great. It should not discourage you for any reason. Like, if we've discovered anything, is there's really no cap to the space for indie games. Yes, you have a lot of work to do if you want to rise to the top, but there's always going to be room for you to try. So someone else succeeding is not you failing. Those things are not connected. And what I would say is, don't ignore those things, but train yourself to look at that and not get discouraged. And you can do that. You can look at that and go like, man, that's really cool. I'm so excited about that. Or just go like, yeah, that looks like a great game. I got to get back to work on my game. Let it remind you to get back to work, because again, the networking thing is great. The social media thing is great, but not if it has this kind of impact on you. So let's all just focus on seeing other people's work and going, oh man, great job. And, you'll see mine soon and you'll think great job. Awesome. No problem. Let's get more in that mindset and not the, that looks good, so I feel bad. Doesn't make sense. Let me make a quick book recommendation. Again, along the lines of traditional publishers and stuff, Gamers at Work is such a good book. And if you're ever curious about the inner workings of publishers, this book is a chance for you to read the words, and I've recommended this before. It's one of my favorite books. You can look at Trip Hawkins, for example, who founded Electronic Arts. He talks all kinds of stuff about how Electronic Arts used to work and how it works now and what he does now. All of these old school developers, Nolan Bushnell from Atari, Wild Bill Steely, who I think he sort of worked as a publisher for Sid Meier. That's why you should recognize his name. This book has really, really great interviews with people who totally built the game industry. So I would consider this required reading. I've read it more than once, and the author's a really nice guy. He'll interact with you on Twitter if you hit him up or whatever. So look at Gamers at Work, stories behind the games people play, and if you enjoy that, there's another follow-up book afterwards called Online Gamers at Work, and I think that's pretty good too. One other thing that I wanted to talk about was there was a great game jam that just ended today. Sorry, I should have talked about this last week. Didn't get to record. It was called the Movie Game Jam, so a lot of people I know were really psyched about this. The idea is to create a game inspired by your favorite movie scene. And I think that's so awesome. The idea is that tie-in games have had a dicey history, you know? Some games are better than others. Now, some Spider-Man games were phenomenal, and I've said that before, but I love those Spider-Man games. Some Spider-Man games are very bad, so I guess that proves the point. The idea here is to take one scene and to make a game out of it, and otherwise it was pretty wide open. I think there was a team cap of 4, but this ran since February 2nd and just closed today. So a couple of my friends made really great games for this. Our buddy Paul Nicholas, who's been on the show, made a great game inspired by Kill Bill for the Pico 8 system, so you can check that out. I played it, it was cool. A buddy of mine who goes by Rhombus on Twitter, this tells the story about how I pick my friends. These two guys for sure picked the same movies that I would go to. Kill Bill a little less so, but my buddy who goes by Rhombus on Twitter picked The Truman Show. And I was floored because that would have been one of the first ones I went to, and I would never have dreamed anyone else on Earth would think to make a game based on The Truman Show. And he did, and it was really clever, and that was another good one. And I think he called it Terman to sort of get off the off the actual movie title. But this was such a neat activity, and I was hoping John was going to be with us this week because I would love to hear what kind of ideas he would have for this game jam. And we would bounce stuff back and forth. I could see making a great game based on Cool Runnings, bobsledding, something like that, or some stupid holiday movie I liked as a kid, like Jingle All the Way would be a good one, you know. And then we could have picked one, and then maybe had a night where we streamed like a development session to try to prototype it. Maybe we'll still do something like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, movie game jam, and this person said he and or she, I don't know who did this, has another one coming up. Oh, hosting a jam in March called Meta Game Jam, where you create a game about games. And I actually have been thinking about a game like that for a long time, and maybe it would sort of go against the spirit of the game jam to tackle that during that event. But I will talk about that sometime in the very near future and tell you guys what that would be. So that's actually about all we're going to get into tonight. I'm going to try not to miss any more weeks, especially now that we've got friends in awesome places and we're starting to do very cool things. So if you guys enjoy what we do here on the Game Dev Breakdown podcast, leave us a rating review if you get to it on iTunes, Google Play. Player FM has been really good to us. We're on Stitcher Radio. We're like everywhere you could think of to find a podcast. We are there. Just subscribe and follow along. Reach out to us on social media. We love hearing from you guys. Good wishes to our buddy John Schreiber, and I'm sure he'll be back as soon as he can. We'll plan on talking to you next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.